Hey, this is Ish, and in today's talk, I'll be going over the extreme extrovert, and specifically what makes up extroversion according to the Big Five personality model, and how someone who is on the higher levels of extroversion will experience life, and some strengths that they will possess naturally, and also some unique challenges that they'll go through as well. And this is speaking from someone who is very extroverted. I know I made a lot of videos where I thought I was introverted, but in fact, I'm actually on the very high end of extroversion. So, extroversion is one factor of the five factors of the Big Five personality model, which makes up openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And within extroversion itself, there are six different facets that make up extroversion. And there's some variations depending on where you look, but I've seen activity, assertiveness, excitement seeking, gregariousness, positive emotion, and warmth. Now, as with all things in life, things change and your level of extroversion isn't static. So, for example, psychologists have found that people become more introverted as they age, and this is something they call intrinsic maturation. Or certain lifestyle changes may also influence your level of introversion and extroversion. But generally, people stay within a certain range of introversion and extroversion. So if you tend to be on the very high end of extroversion, you'll generally stay there. You won't become an introvert that doesn't leave their house ever. That's not you. So if you tend to be on the very high side of extroversion, your experience of life will tend to look a little bit different compared to the average because you're on the extreme end. And with this comes interesting strengths and also some challenges that you'll also face, which I'll discuss here. So, going over the six facets again of extroversion, they are activity, assertiveness, excitement seeking, gregariousness, positive emotion, and warmth. So, when you take a look at the aspect of excitement, novelty seeking, and variety, you can see someone who is constantly looking out in the world and trying to find stimulus there. And this is actually part of the nature aspect of things. Author Susan Cain, who writes books on introversion, describes that the brains of introverts and extroverts are actually a bit different. So, introverts respond to the acetylcholine pathways in the brain, and acetylcholine is more of a calming neurotransmitter where it gets activated by activities such as reflection or reading or just taking time to be by yourself. And extroverts, on the other hand, really respond well to the dopamine pathways. And in fact, they need a higher level of dopamine to even stay awake and alert. And dopamine is linked to novelty seeking. So you'll definitely see extroverts with tons of friends doing a lot of different things in their lives, and it seems like their life is always entertaining or there's always something going on. And yes, while there's a certain spiritual wisdom of renouncing all externals and transcending that and looking within, there's also that same wisdom of engaging in the world and fully being with whatever you're doing. And extroverts do this very well with a lot of high energy as well. So if you recall, activity is one of the six facets of extroversion, and extroverts typically have very high activity levels and energy levels. So they're constantly directing this energy to different tasks and doing things. Now, from an introvert's point of view, looking at an extrovert, it actually may seem that they're very scatterbrained or not able to focus easily because they're constantly distracted. Because extroverts like a lot of variety and novelty. So you'll see them moving around quite often or making tons of different new friends or constantly having new romantic partners or changing jobs often. So there's a lot of variety there. And this can make the extrovert seem like they're distracted because they're constantly switching focus often. And really, it's because they are seeking a breadth of experiences and they gain energy from spreading the attention outwards. So, if you're an introvert listening to this, you can think of it as a refueling system. So, if you are at a party, for example, an introvert may choose to talk to just a few people there, a select few. But an extrovert will want a variety, so they talk to multiple people and they'll go around, the party just talking to everyone. But every time they talk to someone, they gain a point of energy, for example, to use a number system. And to reach 100, they'll have to talk to, say, 50 people. So they get 2 points per person that they talk to. Whereas an introvert will only need to talk to 2 people. So they gain 50 points per person and then they get drained. so, so one of the challenges that extroverts may face is a lack of depth in a certain area. So whether that's making very close friends or sticking to a certain job and actually being there because their need for variety is so high, especially if you're in the extreme end of extroversion. So I think one piece of advice I found in my life is to start to build roots, you should narrow down your fields of interest after trying a lot of different things out. But from that field itself, you can give yourself room to explore. And this really satisfies your need for variety, but then again, you're also planting down a root system. So now going on to the next aspects of extroversion, these would be positivity and warmth. And if you're an introvert, you will tend to look at very extroverted people and see them kind of radiating a lot of joy out into the world. And you may not intuitively understand, or if you have social anxiety, this doesn't really make sense why extroverts just laugh so much, or they're talking a lot, or just spreading a lot of emotions out. It can actually seem a bit overwhelming at times. But when you actually study a lot of extroverts who are just in a room together, one thing they like to do is raise the emotion. So raise a positive emotion. And this is done through laughing or what we call raising the mood or raising the vibe and just spreading emotions out. And an interesting thing happens to your brain and your physiology when you spend a lot of your day laughing, making connections, and just spreading this emotion of positivity outward into the world. It actually changes your physiology, like I mentioned, but also your outlook in life. You start to become more uplifting and also inspirational to other people. This is because when you are optimistic, you tend to have a bigger picture view on where you can go and you're looking at the positive outcomes of things. In addition, you have a I can do this attitude versus a more pessimistic attitude where you believe that you can do anything. So again, when you have a bigger picture vision, you are optimistic about the future and you're also confident, which ties into the factor of assertiveness, which is tied into extroversion. You will tend to be seen as a natural leader. And of course, there's also the style of introverted leadership as well. But this specific flavor of extroverted leadership tends to be more charismatic, more uplifting, and you can really uplift other people through this gift and strength of optimism, warmth, and forward thinking and bigger picture thinking. Now, some of the challenges that may come with this is that you have such a big draw towards positive emotions and constantly wanting more of this positive emotions to imbue your body and being that you can have a tendency to fall into addictive patterns or hedonism because you are always looking for the next pleasurable thing. And here you can have a bit of discernment and mindfulness as watch tools to simply notice when you're slipping into this. And another challenge that comes with extreme extroversion is you can fall into delusional optimism. And this is where you're spending the day laughing and you're with friends all the time and you're radiating this happiness all the time that you may not even see potential downsides of things. And you may have noticed certain people in life that are always happy, even in the most miserable situations. And yes, there could be some wisdom in that. But I think another workaround here is to also be aware of when things may be going south, or or there's some dangers in the environment that you can look into, just so you can prepare for worst case scenarios. You don't want to be unprepared and get into a situation where your life falls apart due to neglect or your just unawareness. Now, the next aspect of extreme extroversion is influence. And this is both the capacity to influence others and also to be influenced. So, as we've already discussed, extroverts tend to spend their energy and attention outward. So, they're also high in the trait of conscientiousness, which is the achievement facet of the Big Five personality model. They'll want to take all that energy and direct it to their business or their work, and they can actually become very successful by their energy levels and attention to detail. Or if they're low in conscientiousness, they may want to live a very chill, relaxed lifestyle, but because their extroversion is so high, they'll just spend all day making friends with everyone. I'm sure you know a lot of people like that. But generally, extroverts spend a lot of time socializing. They're interested in others, whether that's learning about different cultures, lifestyle, reading books on psychology. It's all very fascinating to learn about other people. And when you're also displaying a lot of positivity, which we covered earlier, and warmth, your energy will be very contagious. You'll be like a light in a room that everyone wants to be around. And while there's also an introverted charisma of groundedness and more serene that pulls people in, the extroverted style is kind of spreads out. And this has a capacity to influence other people. Yet the challenge here is also a double-edged sword because extroverts are also very sensitive to the environment too. So they will tend to be drained by certain environments that don't suit them. And because extroverts see everyone as their friend or someone who could potentially be a friend, they're also high in agreeableness. If someone doesn't like them, this can also sting a bit more than an introvert who's a bit more selective with their attention. And talking about how certain environments drain you, you'll tend to notice that extroverts can be drained a lot faster. So they have to be a bit more particular about what workplaces they're in. That it can have a dramatic effect on themselves and their energy levels, the workplace culture, what type of friends that they hang around with, what place they choose to live in, and what neighborhood. And this can have a stronger effect because, again, extroversion feeds off outside stimulus. So you want to make sure that you cater your outside environment to suit your energy levels and what you're looking for. So this can be a double-edged sword, and you can work around this by actively cultivating an overall lifestyle that feeds you positivity. So this can be uplifting friends, workplaces that nourish you, and you want to be a bit more discerning on what you let in. So I think different cultures have understood the effect on aesthetics, and extroverts in particular really have an eye to how the environment looks and how your environment can also influence your mood as well. So Danish people, for example, have hygge, which is cozy comfort. And this is their way of setting up their environment in a cozy way to influence their mood. So I've noticed that they tend to put a lot of candles and soft pillows and cushions in their homes to make it very warm and inviting. So when you walk into this environment, you immediately feel the feelings of warmth and relaxation. And there's also a more austere beauty that you can find in the Zen tradition and Japanese aesthetics, for example, where things are a bit more minimalistic and they have a certain elegance about them. Or in Indian cultures, I'm Indian, for example, there's more colorful patterns and everything's a bit more loud in general. And this also has a nice effect on the mood as well in the right environments. So again, you want to be a bit more mindful on how to set up your environment in a way that it feeds you this energy and positivity. And then the next thing is to practice meditation, which I talk a lot about in this channel. And this is where you draw your energy from within rather than seeking it out. And once you start to become more fulfilled within, you're less pulled by things around you. But another reason is that extroverts can have a tendency to seek external validation a bit more than introverts, that they really want everyone to like them, or it's universal approval, because they're looking outwards a bit more. And here we can wean off this trap of external validation by starting to find approval from within, self love from within, and also being very centered from within. So you're not at the mercy of your environment. But at the same time, you can also practice cultivating your environment, like I mentioned. So practice again, setting up cozy places to live in, maybe put flowers around, mirrors. You can experiment with this, but again, creating this atmosphere that feeds positivity to you. And again, this can be done by looking at your friends, your workplace, places you choose to frequent. And this can all have an effect on you. So I hope you like this talk on the extreme extrovert. I definitely related to this as someone who's very high in extroversion, but let me know in the comments if you like for me to make another talk going over the extreme introvert. Thank you for listening.